incredibly high stakes. So, Mark, I'll ask you this. Am I right to say that this is a complicated issue for the Supreme Court?
Absolutely. You know, Garrett already ran through some of the questions facing the court. Did Trump engage in an insurrection? Is Trump an officer of the United States under the 14th Amendment or not? These are novel questions that the Supreme Court has never confronted and that basically no court had confronted before last year. And I think it poses kind of a conundrum for the justices, especially those on the conservative side. It seems that each and every day, scholars are finding more and more historical evidence from the record to support the idea that when Congress enacted the 14th Amendment in 1868, that it really did want to prevent the presidency from falling into the hands of someone who engaged in insurrection, whether or not they were convicted of that exact crime in criminal court. There were congressmen and members of the public who fretted that Jefferson Davis could be elected president unless this amendment was ratified. And so this evidence seems to be kind of snowballing as more and more states are considering, do we have an obligation under the 14th Amendment to take this guy off the ballot? I don't think the United States Supreme Court wants anything to do with these cases. They are obviously a political hot potato, but I strongly agree with Garrett that the court will not allow there to be a patchwork of rules across the states where some allow him to be on the ballot and some do not. The court will want a uniform nationwide standard, and it will want to be the body that decrees that standard.
The court doesn't want to get overly political. I mean, they certainly got that way with the overturning of Roe v. Wade. It did a huge it put a huge dent into their credibility. Something like this could further damage the court's credibility as well. Is there an option C, D, or E?
Well, so after the Colorado decision, there was a lot of talk that the court might do a Colorado-specific ruling, saying, well, the Colorado procedure here didn't follow due process, that the Supreme Court of the state didn't adhere to the rules that are required by the legislature. But now that Maine has jumped into the fray, I don't think that's possible anymore. I don't think that sort of specking one particular problem with a decision and saying, well, this is just clearly wrong, we have to send it back to the state, that's not going to work. We're going to have to see option A or B, I think, an up or down vote on whether the 14th Amendment means what these states have said. Some kind of secret backdoor way out, an escape hatch, that is disappearing by the minute.
What about to those who argue that, hey, listen, look at the way this court is made up. Donald Trump has appointed 3 of the justices. It's a conservative majority. There's no way they're not going to side with him.
Well, I would say that I think there's something to that. I think that the conservative justices do tend to rule in a conservative direction, and that would benefit Trump here. But I would also say that all 3 of Trump's appointees hold themselves out as originalists, as textualists. And again, there is an increasing pile of evidence here that under the original meaning of the 14th Amendment, Trump is simply not permitted to run for or hold the presidency, that someone who incited an insurrection against the United States cannot run for this office or hold it, because after the Civil War, we as a nation made the decision that we would not tolerate that. And yes, it is a bit anti-democratic in a sense, but all limitations on who can run for office are anti-democratic. And the framers of the 14th Amendment arguably decided that it was worth taking this hit to democracy in order to protect the country as a whole from an insurrectionist being the commander.
Your colleague Dahlia Lithwick argues that the Supreme Court's unlikely to take him off the ballot to agree with the states, but one thing they could do is make it quicker and easier for the courts to proceed with the criminal prosecutions against him, take out all of those roadblocks. What could happen? What could the Supreme Court get into to speed up or to at least keep on the regular timeline, say the election interference case in D.C.?
Yeah, so that's clearly the most important case right now with a trial set for March. And I think that Trump has a very slim chance of prevailing with any of his arguments at the Supreme Court in that case. Again, yes, it's a conservative court, but Trump's arguments here have no basis in the Constitution or in precedent. You know, this idea that a president has absolute immunity from prosecution for acts that he commits while in office, and that immunity somehow lingers permanently after he has left office, that is an entirely novel theory that seems to have been drawn out of thin air. I think that there will be a majority of justices who are eager to sort of sweep aside this argument, to shoot it down relatively quickly, perhaps quickly enough to allow the trial to move forward before the election season kicks into full swing. And if the court does that, it might feel like, okay, we've done enough to sort of ensure the wheels of justice are turning. Now we have the legal and political capital to go ahead and swat down this effort to push him off the ballot. He will be on the ballot, but he'll also have to face a criminal trial for his alleged misdeeds.
I also wonder the
6th.
precedent, though, it sends.